Hey guys, it's Pete from Pete from Anxiety here. Welcome to today's episode. I appreciate y'all being here so much. Let's talk about a few things real quick. The Pete vs. Anxiety Team Anxiety Facebook group. Are you a part of it? You're not? What are you waiting for? The link's down here in the description down below, or go to Facebook and search Pete vs. Anxiety. Then look for the Team Anxiety Team page and join it today. Why not? You can join and help. It'll be great. Yeah, like right now. Hurry up. Stop what you're doing. Pause this video. Go do it right now. But anyways, let's also talk about the Pete vs. Anxiety YouTube page. If you're here right now, you're probably following it most likely. If not, head on over there, subscribe, be sure to like and comment on the videos and let me know, because all that stuff really helps, guys. I really appreciate it. And help me break the stigma that mental health is talked about enough. But anyways, guys, let's get into today's episode. I'll have a great one. Thank you so much again. And as I always say, don't ask how your day is. Ask how your mental health is today. Guys, welcome to an exciting episode of Pete vs. Anxiety. My guest today is no one other than the one, the only, the host of the Psych with a Mic podcast, the Dr. Jen. How you doing today, Dr. Jen?
I'm great, Pete. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited about this.
I am so excited for you to be here. We already know that. I am beyond ecstatic. Dr. Jen's videos are actually a lot of inspiration to the show. I watch a lot of them and a lot of stuff we educated. You've taught me a lot of things you don't even realize. So why don't you tell me a little more about yourself?
Well, I started out in a small farming town in South Texas.
Okay.
From there, I went to University of Texas and then Baylor University for my graduate degree. And at Baylor, the Army picked me up for a health profession scholarship program. So I tagged along with them for a few years, did a residency at Walter Reed in DC, and then I was stationed in Fort Huachuca, Arizona, and then moved here to where I am in the Phoenix West Valley. We've been here since 2006. And after I got out of the military, I jumped right into private practice, and that's what I've been doing ever since. I don't think I can work for anyone ever again because I've gotten to love the independence, of course. I specialize in personality disorders, specifically borderline personality disorder and couples work. And I've written a book on marriage. It's called Fix Your Freaking Marriage. You can find it on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And I've published some other books on respect, one on menopause. I'm working on one on overcoming betrayal. And then the next big one will be Get On With Your Freaking Life. And that's overcoming the self-limiting beliefs that block us in all areas of life. So that's kind of the Reader's Digest version.
I'm having a surreal moment, though. You're talking to me and you're here, and I'm used to seeing your videos and you're talking to me.
I love it.
It's so cool, though. I mean, like you said, you are an expert at BT, because that is literally the first video I saw. When I looked it up one time, somebody had mentioned that's what they had, and I was like, okay. And lo and behold, your video pops on the screen, and I'm like, oh my God, this is so cool. It's like, all right, cool. What is, nice. It was so great, though, because the way you broke it down, it made sense and it was easy to digest. Because I know with BPD and borderline personality and bipolar, that a lot of times people get them mixed up a little bit, but BPD is a little more extreme. And the way you broke down all the facts and everything was so cool. So I kept going to all these different videos and I kept finding them. And I was telling Dr. Jen before we go live is that I was like, we and my wife joked about it. I was like, hey, what if she actually was going to be on the show in time, because I was like talking about people, bringing people on and doing different things. And we had joked about it. And then lo and behold, here she is now, so it was so funny and surreal at the same time. So
full circle.
It is. It's awesome, though. It's so cool, though. I do enjoy the way your videos break things down, and I was laughing too, because you're on TikTok, and I'm like, God, I can only imagine the things that get asked to you there.
Oh my gosh. You're right. The things that people say and the comments that have nothing to do with anything, the comments when I've done lives, I'm like, what is wrong with you people? Like, yes. I cannot believe you're saying this in a public format. And it's keyboard warriors, I know, and I try to ignore it. But I mean, sometimes I get a good chuckle because the stuff they say is just so out there.
Yes. Yeah. That's funny, because it gets interesting because you're watching them. They start typing weird things and you're like, what the hell is wrong with you people? You talk to your mother like this?
Right. Exactly.
So, Dr. Jen, what got you into psychology, though? I mean, it's always interesting to hear people say what what started them to. It's when you said that you can't work for nobody makes me laugh, because a lot of people, that's what they say. They said, now that I work private practice, hell, having a boss, I can't do that anymore.
Yeah. So That's always been an interesting question for me. They ask you that when you're applying to graduate school, and I've been asked that a number of different times, and I don't have any that I recall any significant emotional experience where I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Um, I think I've just always been sort of empathic and just connected with people. I could feel some of the emotion that they were feeling. And I think just growing up, some of the things that I went through, like bullying was a big one in junior high. That was a significant emotional event for sure. But some of the things that I've been through, it just felt like, gosh, it would be really nice to have someone to talk to. And then I just kind of evolved into, wait, I want to be that person for people.
That's because
when I was little, and when I was in elementary school, I wanted to be a teacher, and then I wanted to be a cosmetologist, and then I wanted to be an attorney. And then by the time I got to high school, I wanted to be a psychologist, and I took a course on psychology and sociology. Yeah. And I would say that's when I said, okay, yes, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I, ever since, the rest is history. I just love it. I love it.
Yeah, I do too. I just love the whole area of just mental health. I think psychology, I touched on it a little bit when I was in college. I went to graphic design and multimedia, some fancy title that I never use, So it was interesting because I watched these videos of like when you're interviewing these different serial killers and you're looking at their personalities and how like a lot of the guys, they had no emotion when they were telling you these things. And it's like, how could somebody have no remorse for what they were doing? So I kept digging deep. And I was like, this is so fascinating,
Yes.
And I've done another podcast before. It was just just talk about weird things, and all that other fun stuff in the beginning. And then I stumbled onto a men's mental health episode we had done. And I realized that I'm in the top percentage of men that take their lives in that section. And I was like, dude, this is weird. Why are we not talking about this stuff? If this statistic is so high, why is it not addressed? So I ended up stopping the other one because we were having differences anyways. And then this one came across when I started dealing with my own issues and things like that too. So then I came up with the idea of Pete versus anxiety, because every day I battled my anxiety, and things like that. And like I said, though, and I started doing the show and somebody found out what I was doing. There's a young lady I worked with who told me she had BPD, and I had no idea what that was. And I was like, okay, what is that? And that's what led me to your video. And then that from there, it was just like, it was it. I was like, okay, this is interesting. I want to know more, because as you can see what it looks like in paper, but when you're talking to somebody, each person you interview that has it has a different set of symptoms. A lot of times it's not always the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, there's a continuum. BPD, like most things, runs on a continuum.
Mm-hmm.
So you see a lot of diversity in terms of symptoms or symptom expression, the origins of it. I love hearing your origin story, though, that you were doing one thing and then there was this thing that happened and now you're over in mental health. I love hearing those stories. And I think it's interesting how we're guided to do certain things. And I think that's what's helped me do this work, because sometimes it can be really difficult. It can be really painful. It can be really sad. Most of the time it's just really rewarding, which is what keeps us coming back. But I feel like when you're given a calling and you're feeling there's something on your heart or on your mind or both, you can't ignore that. You've got to follow that nudge.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's just like, had I known the conversations I was going to get into doing this beforehand, I probably would have laughed and been like, haha, this is funny. Because since I started this show has been booked out to the end of the year when I started in September of last year. I literally had people lined up that just were knocking on the door wanting to. So I added another time slot, because I used to do a weekly show on Mondays until I opened the whole calendar up. But that's when I just really got into some interesting conversations. We had a guy beginning of the year actually talk about his suicide ideation when we were live, and people were just going panic, like Godzilla's crushing Tokyo again. Oh God. And it was interesting to see people's responses, because up until that point, I've never had to deal with that conversation with people. I knew it was going to come up. Yeah. And when it happened, I didn't say anything. I was really calm about it, but he was over there just talking, and he just cycled back to it. And I'd never seen so many people triggered by that. And I was just like, I'm wondering, like, that's really interesting. Why do people get so upset about it? It's like, he's just talking about what he was thinking about, and things like that, and we've had several moments on the show where people are like, man, I had to stop, take a few minutes and come back because you guys were just digging too deep for me. Like narcissism was a big one too. a lot of my viewers were like, I had a few people reach out and go, listen, I had to stop 15 minutes in because you guys had me at a standstill because I'm feeling it, man. And it's like, those great messages that you keep getting from people are great because it means that we're touching subjects that people want to talk about.
Right.
And then other people just keep coming to me going, well, Pete, I appreciate what you're doing. And all I'm doing is having a conversation. But really at the same time, I'm having a conversation nobody wants to talk about. But why is that though? Do you have a feeling? Do you have an understanding why people don't want to talk about their mental health?
That's always been curious to me. I mean, I get on some level, of course, I get it. Like people, they don't want to be that vulnerable. I've built a career around trying to emphasize the importance of the mind-body connection.
Yeah.
So the brain and the body are inextricably linked by the spinal cord. You can't change that. They work together. They're linked. They're connected. So it's really ignorant of us to think that one isn't going to affect the other, and vice versa. It runs both ways. So what I tell people is, look, if your pancreas stopped producing insulin, you would need to get some treatment. That's diabetes. You would need to get some treatment. And if you didn't, you might die, right? Like people can die from untreated diabetes. So the pancreas is an organ. The brain is an organ. What's the difference?
Yeah.
Why not treat all organs? But there's this divide, to your point and to your whole mission. There's this divide. It kind of cuts off like right here, where people are like, well, if it's in my head, I should be able to control it.
Yeah.
Okay, if you really break that down, that's a really ignorant thing to say. And when I say ignorant, I don't mean stupid, I mean unaware. So ignorance is just a lack of awareness, right? So if you think about it, if the pancreas produces insulin, the brain produces neurotransmitters, serotonin, norepinephrine, dopamine, GABA, glutamate, excuse me, those guys. So what's the difference? It's an organ that produces chemicals that we need. So it's important any way you look at it. Why do we treat them so differently? And all I've really come up with is that people just think that they should be able to control their thoughts. But when you really break it down and you're like, look, it's an organ just like the pancreas, the stomach, the, whatever, then they sort of start to see like, oh, yeah, I guess, maybe I'm being too hard on myself. But I think the other part is there's an emotional vulnerability when you really talk about your mental health, because everybody is struggling behind their eyes. And some people are willing to talk about it. Other people are willing to build shows around it and educate people. And then other people are like, I cannot tell a soul. I would just die if anybody knew what was going on for me. And we're on a planet of over 8 billion people at this point. Whatever you're thinking, feeling, and experiencing, I will bet you any sum of money you choose, you're not the only one.
Exactly. Yeah, you're not alone. That's a big thing I preach to people too. It's like you're not alone. And my thing with people's stories too, I invite a lot of people. I go, your story's going to touch somebody's heart, and if you do to one person, you've already won at that point.
Absolutely.
Because somebody in the world is going to hear that story and go, "Hey, that's me too. Now I don't feel so alone." And things like that too. But that is a lot of times what I hear with a lot of people I invite to come on. So people are like, well, I'm just not ready to tell my story, or I don't, I don't want somebody to know it's me. And we've had situations where I've had a guest where her situation was so bad, she had to have the camera off because she didn't want anybody to know what she looked like, because she was describing her narcissistic ex of 15 years and talking about him in her book and things like that too. So it's been interesting though. And it's certain subjects, I mean, it get really interesting. Like sexual assault gets really interesting. Like you hear a lot of times, like people, say, "Oh, my issue's really small," and I tell them, I'm like, "No, stop. We don't do that. You don't come on here and tell me it's a small issue. What happened to you is a serious thing. Big, little, whatever you feel it is, it's still important to somebody out there that they don't feel like they're alone." And when someone comes and shares their show, I'm always very encouraging of them and things like that too, and all that stuff. And I don't leave any topic untouched. I've talked about everything. Hell, I did a whole episode on a breast cancer memoir that someone had wrote. And it was interesting because I'm a male, so by society standards, I shouldn't be talking about these things because this doesn't involve me. But it was so interesting to see her memoir and how she broke it down. And the vulnerability this woman had, she bared it all. Like, you saw everything,
Wow.
so like I don't leave any subject untouched. So when like that's like I said, people come to me all the time and they say they appreciate the things I'm doing, and it feels good though, because
Yeah.
it's like it's not only just me, it's helping me too, because I'm going on a journey. I'm learning new things. I'm learning more about myself, honestly, because last year I found I'm energy sensitive. I don't know if you get into the holistic side at all, or any of that kind of spiritual things like
So,
that.
yeah. What did you
So
learn?
I learned that I'm an empath as well, and it's this comment I'm about to pull up right now. As this person says right here, like Steve says, he says, I'm an empath as well. I can feel strong energy. I found after struggling with out of the blue emotions, like I was sensing spirit energy around me. I've been a paranormal investigator for about 30 years now. I'm told that I'm not the only walk with spirits, but spirits walk with me. I feel their emotions, and I thought that I had major anxiety, but now I believe it's that I'm sensing the spirits' emotions around me. I can relate to what he's saying though, because I had this feeling all the time, like there was something there. I couldn't tell what it was. Now, I did an interview with the woman that she called herself the energy alchemist, but she and I had a deep conversation, and I found out that I'm sensitive to energy, which made sense because I could feel this energy, like the energy around people or something around me all the time. Could never explain what it was. It was almost like a sixth sense, And then there was another thing too. It's like when I come close to people, certain people I didn't like, I got this weird pit feeling in my stomach, and I couldn't tell what it was. It's like, for something I don't like, a reason I don't like them. And I found out I'm energy sensitive though, because I'm sensing their energy that they have. And
Mm,
I'm very empathic as well, because I can read a lot of people's emotions. Like I can look at across the room, I can tell if somebody's having a bad day. I'll start asking them questions. And then there was another thing when we got into my birth chart, which was very interesting for me, is it said that I have something in my chart shows that says that people come up to me and tell me things that they normally wouldn't tell me, which was weird at first, because I was like, wait a minute, that explains a lot of things, because people would come up to me and I just have a general conversation with them, and they start sharing things they never would tell anybody. And they've told me that several times. Well, I never would tell anybody this. You're the
right.
first person I've told. And it was so weird, because I was like, huh? But it
Right.
was so interesting, because it made sense, because it was like, well, damn, and mind you, the person reading my chart has no idea anything about me prior to this conversation.
Yeah.
She is telling things about my mother, and I've had issues with my mom and these things like that. And it was so interesting, because she's explaining all the astrological houses, and we're hitting these points, and I'm just like, I'm mind blown, because I'm like, well, damn, okay. And I'm like, I'm telling people, I'm like, guys, I didn't tell her any of this stuff. She knew none of these things before this conversation. And it was so fascinating how close it was. So now I've been kind of going down that little area too, and checking that stuff out as well.
It's an honor when someone says that to you, when they say, "I've never told anyone this,"
Mm-hmm.
but I think there are just we do come with an energy. We have a vibe, we have an energy that we emit. And
Yeah.
it's the same reason that, we select the friends we select.
Mm-hmm.
I've gotten very selective about my friends at this point in my life, and I try to not have drama in relationships, right? And put up boundaries when that happens. And you figure out who your people are when you've been on the planet as long as I have.
Yeah.
So, but I think we're drawn to certain people.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot to that. Like, we like the energy, we like their presence, we like their confidence, we like their sense of humor, whatever. All of these things create a person's energy. So I think there's a lot to be said for how that draws us to certain people and it repels us from other people.
Yeah, I think you said it perfectly too, because there's a couple other people I've had on that were in that kind of area. We were discussing that too. She was like, I attract the people I want, and I repel the people I don't want. And the people that don't like my energy, they get upset by it. And it's like, okay, well, that makes sense, because I do keep a small circle of friends. I don't live many people in my little orbit here. Like, there's very little people that are here
Hmm.
and things like that. I'll let people get close enough, but do you get into the inner circle? No, because I don't. 90% of the time, I don't trust people, because like my ex cheated on me, so I have really bad trust issues already. Right
Mm.
there, she was a narcissist, so I dealt with that for 15 years. She
Oh my
gaslit me,
gosh.
all the things a narcissist would do, and things like that too. And at the time, I didn't realize what it was until I knew, and it just was like, it was horrible, because then after learning a lot of things, I was just started identifying how to deal with this person, because we had kids together, and now she weaponizes the kids against you and things like that as well. But I'm like, I'm watching what she's saying because normally she'll trigger me. But after doing this for a while and talking to so many different people, I start learning how to pick apart the conversation with her. And you can just see the level of frustration from just one word answers coming out of her. And she's just like typing away furiously. And normally I would engage it, but now I'm more self-aware of what's been going on and
Awesome.
things like that too, and it was like it was so surreal because I'm like looking at it like, all right, here we go. And then she's just doing it. I'm sitting there thinking about what she's saying. And I'm like picking apart this conversation. I'm just one word answering her. And she's just getting so mad, just fiercely typing. And it makes me laugh because I'm just like, before I used to give into that and I type away and we'd have a text battle so you could type faster than the other person. But now it's like I'm more self-aware of these things. And I'm just like, yeah, you're not going to win this battle today. Sorry.
Wonderful. Boundaries are beautiful.
I think I love it when you say boundaries, though, because I think a lot of people, when they set them, you always hear that same thing that comes out that, hey, listen, you're being selfish. And it's not. You can agree to this whole statement, too, that it's not that you're being selfish. You're just placing the things into place. You're telling people, listen, these are my boundaries. If you can't respect them. And I think the hardest part a lot of people have is that when they set the boundaries, they try to give in because they're just given to the pressure of other people that are just kind of picking at it. Like, oh no, you're being selfish. You're not being reasonable. Da, 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 da. You know what I mean? And it drives me crazy at times.
It's not selfish, it's
Hmm.
self-preserving. But it is a very big issue for people. I'm actually, as we speak, I'm developing a West Valley Women's Summit here
Oh,
in the Phoenix area where I live.
awesome.
And that's what we're going to be talking about is boundaries and what that looks like and how, it's not, boundaries are not Lucifer in human form. Like these are limits that you have. It's like the moat around a castle. You
Yeah.
have to protect your priorities, your heart, your mind, your relationships, yourself, and people just a lot of people confuse boundaries with being aggressive.
Hmm.
And it's not aggressive, it's assertive. There's a giant difference between the two. And boundaries are important. If you don't establish where you end and the next person begins, you will run exhausted, especially if you're an empath, you'll run exhausted
Hmm.
for your entire life. And
God,
you'll be
yeah.
like, why am I so tired? I'm not even doing anything. I haven't even gotten out of my chair today and I'm just exhausted. Well, yeah, because you're navigating all of these relationships that are violating boundaries of yours in some way, whether spiritual, financial, emotional, psychological, physical, whatever. You're allowing that into your realm and that will zap your energy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just self-preserving.
Social media is like that too. Like TikTok, for an example, it's like it has had a grip on me at one point. So now what I do is I like to unplug. Like I'll have little posts set up. Like Instagram's great for that. I can set up things so they'll drop so it looks like I'm still active. But a lot of times I'll just stop answering or I'll just not even look at it for a couple days because it gets so drawn in because all those people sending you those live invites and all these things come in and you feel like that you're being left out. Do you have any advice for anybody that runs through that kind of problem? Like I figured it out, but for everybody else that's listening or somebody that at home may have that issue where they do that doom scrolling, any advice for that?
Yeah, I mean, it's about a boundary. Again, we're coming back to the limits that you set in your life. So TikTok is, I call it the vortex because it will just suck you
Yes.
in. And then it's these quick little videos, usually mine tend to be longer, as you know, but quick little videos that are 7 seconds, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, whatever. And it's triggering the release of dopamine in your brain. And dopamine is that pathway is the same thing that's implicated in addiction to drugs, alcohol, sex, gambling, whatever, chocolate, whatever. So there are a couple things that you can do. I've gotten to where now I will, what I call post and ghost. So I'll go on TikTok and post, and then I will, go into my comments, respond to people's comments, whatever, do my little, due diligence for my channel. And then I get the hell out of there. And TikTok makes it difficult because the minute you open the app, it pops something up for you. And so sometimes I'll get caught and I'm like, oh, what is she doing? That looks really interesting. What is that? Or what is that skincare routine? Or, whatever. And then before I know it, I'm sucked in. So now I open the app and I immediately go to like click on my profile or my comments or whatever inbox and do what I need to do and then get out of there. So if you're someone who maintains a social media presence yourself, that's one thing you can do is practice posting and ghosting. And then beyond that, I think it's important for a couple of things. So because we know that these little dopamine hits are what keep us make us compulsive, it's important to find other ways in your life that you can trigger the release of dopamine. One of those, for example, is by triggering the release of endorphins first. And endorphins, it stands for endogenous morphines. Those are the happy chemicals in the brain. They're free and legal. And all you have to do is move your body for 20 to 30 minutes and they start coming out. There are other things that release them like sex and meditation and, all the different things, but find ways to get that dopamine generated that isn't so rapid fire, because that's what gets us addicted, is when something works instantly. It's kind of like when people take medication for anxiety. So if they take a medication that's long acting, those medications are not habit forming. If they take a medication like a benzodiazepine, like Valium, Xanax, some of those guys, those medications are really habit forming because they act so quickly. So you have to leverage that principle and find ways to release dopamine that take a little bit longer. Then the other thing is getting into a habit of just sitting without the release of dopamine. So just sitting and being present, or reading a book, which I think is a lost art anymore, right? So having a conversation with someone, like just engaging with people is a great way to offset that sort of rapid fire, because conversations generally are not going to be so reinforcing in rapid fire.
Yeah.
So the conversation can be good. It can be reinforcing overall, but it's not something that's happening so quickly that you get addicted to it. Yeah. So those are just some things off the top of my head that I think can help with that dopamine draw.
Yeah, no, I agree. What I tend to do too when I'm at like 5 o'clock, my wife gets home, so like on my phone, I'll put it down screen side down too, helps as well. Like whenever time she starts talking to me, I'll literally put it down so I'm paying attention, because at first I used to have that really bad habit of just staring at it. So I'll tend to put it screen side down, and the minute she starts talking to me, I'll put it down and things like that too. And it actually works better for me, because then it means I'm paying attention to what she's saying and actively listening. Because before, I used to sit there and try and do 20,000 things at first. When I started this podcast, actually, at first I was trying to answer every single message. And I was like, oh God, I gotta answer. So now I'm to the point. It's like, well, no, I got a calendar for that. You can go to the calendar. Calendar can handle it from there. If any of your questions come up, they'll be tomorrow in the morning or after, whenever I come back to look at this message,
And that's an important boundary. I mean, I think that, the other podcasts that I've been on, they have the same thing. They have a system that you go through if you want to be on there, and it just kind of externalizes some of that responsibility, and keeps them out of the minutia, and then lets you focus on this, right?
Yeah.
Like doing the thing. So that alone, just having a calendar app handle your podcast booking, that's a boundary. People often think boundaries are these big, as you said, selfish things that we do. No, boundaries are saying no. Boundaries are disallowing negative energy. Boundaries are streamlining and coming up with efficient processes like what we're talking about. Boundaries can look any number of ways.
Yeah, definitely. No, I agree. Speaking of podcasts, let's talk about your podcast.
Okay.
When did you start doing your podcast? I mean, it's a lot to do. Mind you, anybody that hasn't done a podcast before, it is a lot of work at first until you get those systems in place. So I'm interested to find out when you started it and how hard was it at first for you?
So I don't remember. I feel like I'm trying to remember if it was before or after COVID. I think I was looking at this yesterday. I think it was around COVID-ish time that I started doing it, because I remember all the limits that were put on us, and I wanted to reach more people. And COVID made it clearer, because I was very blessed. I was very fortunate. I still maintained a practice during COVID. I just went virtual. And then I've stayed virtual. But I still felt this, like there were so many people really struggling with the lockdown. And so I thought, I need to reach more people. I see 7 people a day, 4 days a week. That's 28 people a week. And we're on a planet of over 8 billion people at this point. So I was like, I need to reach more people. What can I do? So that's when I started writing books, the podcast, and my online training platform, the Psychoeducation Academy. So all of that kind of came around at about the same time, or around the same time. And when I started it, I have a Mac desktop, and I just did GarageBand, which is the software that comes with the machine. So I did that. And GarageBand I found pretty intuitive, actually. There were certain things I had to YouTube it, or, do a search or whatever. So, and then, getting a microphone and some of those things. Mine is pretty unfancy. I don't have a studio. This is my office that I see patients from. I just pray that it's going to be quiet when I need to, be doing something. I try to do it when the kids are out of the house, so some of the logistics stuff I have to be mindful of, but I love doing it. Now, I've not had any guests on. It's been a solo endeavor thus far. I'd like to get to the place of getting guests, and I think that makes it a little more complicated. You can probably attest to that, because you've got to book them. There are legal forms and things that sometimes people want completed. And then you've got to have some sort of platform, and, you've got to have all the tech figured out and everything. So I think that gets a little more difficult. Doing it solo, though, I would say it wasn't terribly difficult.
Yeah.
And maybe that was just the software that I had,
I would say probably it is that, because now there's so many different options. Like, God, they throw so many different issues. Spotify had their own. Podbean, I was on for a little bit. It was strictly audio. I got into this one when I joined the network. I'm a part of the Oracle Talk Radio Network. I'd never used it prior to that. And I got into it, and they were like, oh, no, it's easy. Don't worry. You can figure it out. I'm like, okay, sure, dude. Like, I'm glad you're telling me this is easy, but I've never used this before. But all right, man, why not? But ever since then, it's been great, though. Like, like I said, we're multi-simulcasting from 6 different places right now, which is kind of cool, though, to see, because you can get all these different people coming in. And, because when I started mine too, I had a lot of interesting conversations, setting up guests and things like that too. I've had a lot of unplanned things happen in the conversations. Like I told you about at the beginning of the year, where they had the guy freaking out and everybody just going crazy. I've had a Columbine shooting survivor on the show too, early on in the beginning. And I didn't realize how close this woman was involved. She's literally about maybe 6 feet away from one of the shooters. And she's like, I could see the whites of this guy's eyes. And mind you guys, when I'm recording this, it's audio. So I'm in a dark room because I had a situation with my internet. So I had to switch rooms real fast, and things like that. And I don't have a fancy studio. I use a side bedroom, basically. I have a nice little screen back there. Sometimes I'll use, depending on if I got the time to set it up and things like that. But it's really, to me, it's like, I understand, but it's like, at the same time, it's what content you're putting out is really what matters. The scenery kind of matter. I could be in the middle of a McDonald's play place, and it'd still be better content than most people, and it's so, especially when you get in this topic too, because when I did it originally, I was looking to see what kind of people were talking about these things. And a lot of times you see doctor, and it's like, I was like, where are the average people just having a conversation about this, and then that's when this whole thing started. But had I known the demand I was going to get, Jesus, I'm literally in November right now booking people. If I took all my dates and stretch them out, I'm probably into next year already of just content of people alone.
Yeah,
and,
that's awesome.
And it's a lot to do too. For me, it's a lot of juggling. Like, I have to go to like Instagram and put all these things. But the nice thing about what I'm using though is I can send it out all those places without having to actually be there. Now I go in there and tag certain things because those are the requirements I have for certain networks I'm on. And things like that too. But had I told anybody this is where I would be, and after I started this thing, I would have laughed at myself, because I'm like, there's no way in hell, man. People are going to be knocking on your door to be on the show. Literally, I'm like, yeah.
It's amazing.
And it is. It's like I said, it's so great because it's just one man on one mission, and then it's like having the guest aspect. You don't know how the conversation's ever going to go, and that's the scary part of it all too, because I don't put a lot. I don't prep a lot. I know it sounds bad to people when I say this, but I don't prep a lot. I jump in these conversations. So everything you hear me saying 90% of the time is just generally me. And a lot of people have come up to me and said, oh, hey, you sound so intelligent. And it makes me laugh, because it's like, I've always had an opinion. You just never wanted to hear my opinion. That's what it was. And my siblings are like that too. They're like, oh, you're so smart. I'm like, but am I though? Or is it that I had these thoughts and none of you all want to listen, because I'm the middle child, and we all know how that works right there. You're always seen but not heard in that middle. So it's been an interesting ride though. But when you have guests, oh yeah, there's some fun stuff that comes with that because you don't know what they're gonna say.
Right.
And luckily to this date, I really haven't had any problems with many guests, but I've heard people's horror stories. Like they're getting all like I was talking to a good friend of mine, Mr. Whiskey. He runs a podcast called A Couple Nukes. He said that he had one guy come on and had never heard his show before. It was the worst experience ever. And I'm just like, dude, I've yet to have that problem. I'm surprised. So, like I know, knock on wood, it may happen, it may not happen, and I'm not sure if I'll be prepared. We'll see, because a lot of times, like I said, you don't know what people are going to say when you go live, and I'm prepared to cut the cord if I have to. But so far, luckily, I haven't had any polar extremes come on here talking crazy.
It may have to do with your content too. I mean, when we're talking about mental health, I would assume that the people that you're getting to come on the show are, they have something to do with mental health. Either they've experienced some mental health challenges and it's made them very humble, or they're a professional in the field and, hopefully they're going to speak professionally. So it may have something to do with the content. I hope you never have to encounter that, but I imagine the conversations still get really interesting. And I think when you don't do a lot of prep work, I think that it just ends up being very authentic. And I think that's what people want to hear. I mean, that's why I think TikTok has been such a blessing for me, is because I'm just like, here it is. This is what BPD is. This is what it looks like. If you're having this struggle, here's how you can help yourself. Like you just put it out there.
Yeah. No, I agree. TikTok is always an interesting thing. Any place you post anything is just interesting, because the comments people say, you're just like, really? Yeah. Like I've had people comment on some of my videos and just say the weirdest things. I'm like, but that's not the point of this conversation. What do you mean, dude?
Oh, the keyboard warriors, man. I just kind of chuckle. I'm just like, all right, dude, whatever. Like if you feel better for saying that, that's between you and your God. I'm just going to.
Yeah, I know. I've been in one of your lives. So I remember that. That's how we actually connected. I told people that story. I'm like, I was in there just, and because someone else had asked me how I keep getting all these guests. I'm like, listen, man, you just got to shoot your shot. Go in there and just ask them, hey, listen, I got this. And luckily, I'm like, she had all these people scrolling. She saw my comment out. And I'm not going to lie to you. I freaked out as soon as you said yes. I was like, what? I got out of the thing. I was going nuts. And my wife's like, what happened? I said, you remember that lady I talked to you about in the beginning of the year? We were joking about it. Guess who just said yes to be on the show? And she goes, oh my God. Yeah, really? I'm like, yeah.
Oh, and that's awesome.
And then I have to be honest with you. When you emailed me and you're like, well, I'm so sorry it took me so long to get back. I'm just thinking in my head, I'm going, oh my God, is this really happening? She's talking to me.
You flatter me, Pete. That's so sweet.
It was so, well, because it was so awesome, because it's like you see in the videos, all these great videos you're doing, and then it's like you're talking to yourself like, hey, man, I wish one day one of these people to come, and and I've met other people that are more successful than I am along the way, but they all were like, the same thing. Like, you just got to ask, and that's how I met one of my good friends, Lucy Lenore. She's a musician. She has like 20,000 followers on Instagram. I did the same thing. I'm just typing, and I'm just asking people all the time, like, listen, hey, I got the show. What do y'all think? And I go for it. I'm like, forget it. At this point, they're going to say no. They're going to see it, or they're not going to see it. At this point, my best advice to most people is just go for it, man. But people always ask me that though.
Shoot your shot. Yeah, shoot your shot. That's it. That is perfect. Like if the answer is always no if you don't ask.
Yeah. Definitely. No, I agree 100%. But it's so interesting though, because it's like you see these videos, you're watching the videos, you teaching me all these things. And I'm like, we spent a lot of, I wanted to joke and be like, listen, we spent a lot of time together. You just don't know it, kind of thing, because I've been watching all your videos. I've been learning a lot of things from you as I go and things like that. So it's so great, when you get that chance to interview these people that come on. But I had most of the people I get come on are mental health related. I stay in that subject. Sometimes I'll do some special episodes of just people I just want to have on the show just because I'm just fascinated about certain subjects and things like that too. But when you hit go live, God knows you never know what the next thing is going to be said. Like we had somebody had like DAD on the show and things like that too. And you're like, if you're watching them, like, now you know what to watch for, like the little tweaks that they do in their personality and things like that. So it's been so fascinating as we go, and like I said, I'm already out to November, and I think this morning I had another 5 or 6 people sign up, and I'm just like, this is just so surreal that these people just want to keep come talking to me, man. I'm like, I don't know what they want to talk to me about, but let's go.
Yeah, why not? Let's go for it. So
you said you're working on a new book, huh?
I'm working on 3 of them at the same time, because this is how my brain operates.
Okay.
So the one you'll see here God willing, very soon, is called The Betrayal Breakthrough. And
Okay.
it's transforming pain into power when you've been betrayed. So I just did a semifinal edit on that this week. I'm going to run through it one more time. And then I'm going to start pre-sales and start moving in that direction, hopefully this month. I mean, that's kind of my self-imposed deadline because I've been wanting to do it for a long time.
Yeah.
And what happened was I got distracted because I have self-diagnosed ADHD, I'm pretty sure. So I am working on this, and then I go to a friend's house for, I don't know, happy hour, whatever it was, and her spouse asked me a question about people who are indecisive.
Yeah.
And so I just was kind of spitballing with him, like, here's, he's like, why is that? What, talk to me about that. So I was just kind of spitting some ideas out. And then I got home and I was like, because if one person has that question on a planet of 8 billion people, you can guarantee somebody else has that question. Right.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like you said, if I can help one person, mission accomplished, check the box, we're moving on to the next thing. So I was like, I got to get all this out. So I came home and like just started dumping things out of my brain. And then I just kept going and kept going. And then I was neglecting the betrayal book and I just kept going and kept going. And so then finally I got myself back on track. We've done some traveling this summer and stuff, and finally got myself back on track. So the betrayal book should be coming out again, God willing, this month. The other one that's kind of moving in the background is, so my marriage book is called Fix Your Freaking Marriage.
Yeah.
And what was designed to be the second book, which is now, I don't know, number 4 or 5, is called Get On With Your Freaking Life. And it's about 7 self-limiting beliefs that we have based in early experiences growing up, especially before the age of 6, because of the state our brain is in during that time. We develop these beliefs. These core beliefs then generate negative automatic thoughts. And those thoughts lead to feelings, and those feelings lead to behaviors like self-sabotage, like self-sacrifice, like not feeling good enough, all of the things that block us from success. And so that's going to be the second really big one, I guess. I don't know. The betrayal book ended up being a lot bigger than I thought.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes. But the Get On With Your Freaking Life is the one about overcoming those beliefs and how you have to walk through those early experiences, reprocess what happened, reframe it, compartmentalize it in a healthier way. Because you've already got it compartmentalized, whether you know it or not. But it's not necessarily healthy because in your unconscious mind, these things are driving you and you don't even realize it. So we compartmentalize it in a healthier way. Once we've looked at it differently, then we can really get into overcoming those beliefs and looking at self-actualizing beliefs. So that's the whole point, is to change self-limiting beliefs into self-actualizing beliefs through this process that I've developed over 20 plus years.
Yeah. I'm interested in the betrayal one because I've been in that situation myself, and I find it's hard to get after that point, because it's like, what do you do afterwards? Because your self-trust of other people is just like, you're like, you're skeptic of everybody you meet along the way too. And it took me a couple of years.
Yeah, it's hard. The betrayals that I've had, I mean, I've had some personal ones and I've had some professional ones. And this book was actually prompted by a professional betrayal. So something happened. So I'm a psychologist by day, and then I have multiple side hustles that I do because, again, ADHD. So in one of the side hustles, there was a professional betrayal that I endured. It was actually personal and professional because we were friends. Or so I thought. And so this happened, and I was like overwhelmed with emotion. It's not the first time it happened. Unfortunately, it won't be the last. If you're human, you're going to be betrayed at one point or another. It's just a matter of time. So I was like, I was like vibrating. I was like, I don't know what to do with this. And because it did catch me off guard. It takes a lot to shock me anymore. So I don't think I was shocked, but I was surprised. And so I was just kind of reeling from that. So I decided I'm going to get on the treadmill, and I'm going to get my laptop, and I'm just going to type and walk at the same time. And the movement helps people process. I had seen that before. Some back when I was in person, certain patients would go on walks while we did their session because it just helped them process better. And there's science behind that and so forth. But I was like, all right, I'm just going to try this. I get on, I think that in that walking episode, I got to 6,000 words. And I was like,
Jeez.
dang, okay, we can do this. Let's do this. And then before I knew it, I think I'm almost 21,000 words now for that betrayal book. So it just kept growing. And that's what happens. Like my marriage book is 76,000 words. My goal was 20 on that book. And then I
Yeah.
was like, wow, I have a whole lot more to say about this than I thought, you know, being married for 20 years, being a therapist for 20 years. So, highly recommend that when you have a significant emotional event, get moving and get organized, like get your thoughts out. And the book details what I call the police report method. So the who, what, why, when, where, how of betrayal. And it's organized so that it's the first thing people are going to do it's the first thing they're going to see when they read the book. Hopefully they'll do it. So you go through and you elaborate on these elements of the betrayal, get it all out of you. What happened? Where were you? How did it happen? Any idea why? Blah, blah, blah. So you set that, you know, out at the beginning. And then the rest of the book is helping you make sense of what happened and then overcome it and then move forward. So that's how it's done. But it started on a treadmill.
Yeah, you know, and like I said, it'd be great for two situations. One, the situation with my ex and my mom when she abandoned me when I was 10.
Ugh.
You know, I had a lot of issues that came from that I didn't realize at first, you know, because I was ignorant to it. You know, I didn't know. I knew I
Mhm.
was always an angry kid. I was always mad at her, and I didn't know why at first, you know. And then, you know, fast forward all the way through all the things that I've gone through up to this point, it was just like I was doing self-destructive behavior as well. Like, not to mention the narcissist didn't help because she saw that and was fueling the fire, and, you know, taking advantage of the fact I was always angry, and I always threatened to leave, and then it, you know, kicked me into that fight or flight mode a lot of times, you know. And a lot of crazy things that happened along the way until I finally started talking to somebody about it and realized that's what the issue was too. And it just gets horrible, man. It's so it's so bad, but at the same time, you know, I have to admit my own faults to where I was and what I did, because I allowed these actions to happen as well. You know, yes, you know, I probably should have gotten help sooner, but I didn't because for whatever reason I refused to. I didn't think I had a problem like we all do. You know, we don't think we have issues and things like that too. You know, and my mom and I don't have a great relationship now. I'm still trying to get over that hump of forgiving her, and that's always like that wall I get caught at every time because I get ready to go over it, and then it's like something pushes me back. It's like, oh no, wait, remember she abandoned you, kind of thing. And it's like, and she is not going to say okay for it. And I think that's my biggest thing is I want her to say she's okay or admit she's wrong, but I know she's not going to do that. I know I've known her for this long. I'm 40 years old now. There's no way she's going to say that. She'll deny it. But I did notice something though when I was a kid. I remember having flashbacks like my grandmother would do the same thing as well, though. She would say, oh no, I never did those things, or I never, you know. And it was this pattern, and I never noticed it at first that the one and she was doing it too. And that's when I start learning that, you know, like all these things you learn from your mom, your parents, and everything else. And I start remembering now that she used to do the same thing my grandmother did, and it always was funny to me because I was just like, oh, that's hilarious. But I didn't realize that my grandmother's the one that taught her those things, you know. And then it's like, oh, I never. And then I started doing that too because I seen them doing that. And I was like, no, I never did those things, you know. And I think that was the hardest reality too, is when I had to admit to what I've done. You know, I've done some horrible things. I've said some horrible things. I've, you know, you know, and it's hard to accept blame, and I still have trouble accepting blame a lot of times, but it's getting easier every time I accept it, you know. And then when you have to deal with the things being tossed back at you, it's like you don't like it. It's like it's great when you can put it out, but when it comes back at you and you get so aggravated, it's like, no, never mind. But you're like, you're doing this to other people though. Keep that in mind. You're doing this to other people. Why are you doing that to other people if you don't like it coming back at you?
It's hard. I mean, I think that self-awareness is so crucial. And I think when there's a betrayal, we have to give ourselves the closure. Closure is a solo pursuit. Even if someone apologizes, takes
Yeah.
ownership, I'm so sorry, I was not a good person back then, I was not in a good way, whatever the reason, I'm not going to make excuses, I'm just sorry.
Yeah.
Even if you're fortunate enough to have that happen, you still have to make the decision to say it is done,
Yeah.
right? So it's still a personal effort. It's still a self pursuit. Like you have to pursue your own closure. You have to allow that to happen. And I talk about this at length in the book, but when we don't do that, we're holding on to something. And whenever we don't do that, it's because we're getting something out of not moving forward, whatever that is. Because as humans, and this isn't selfish, this is just human nature, we don't do things unless we get something out of it.
Yeah.
One way or another. It's not always good, the thing that we get out of it. It's not always positive, but we get something out of it. And so a lot of people will live in pain and live in unforgiveness because they think it protects them somehow from that person hurting them again, from someone else hurting them. We get all of these sort of delusional ideas in our minds about why we need to hang on to this. And it's just not serving us. So the book really talks about like, hey, you're not doing yourself any favors. Like, let's move on. And here's how you do that specifically. Here's what that's going to look like. And it's okay. And the thing is, you're holding on to a betrayal isn't going to keep you from being betrayed again. Like it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
But we have these ideas that we're protecting ourselves somehow. And so, like I said, we don't do anything without getting something out of it. I don't believe in altruism. I think everything we do, we get something out of it. Even when we're helping and being generous to other people, we get something out of that. We feel good for doing it. It helps, the golden rule, kind of what goes around comes around kind of thing. Like it just, we know that it feels good to do it. We hope that the favor gets returned, whatever. There is no such thing as altruism. So when we hold on to something, we're getting something out of that too. Yeah. And that's what the book is about.
I'm excited about it though, but I'm going to pull a comment up here right now from Mimi.
Okay.
Mimi said, I grew up with a narcissist dad and sister. I just realized the nasty people are broken. So I learned that from that. I also learned a lot of cues as I got older. Now when I'm faced with another crisis, I know how and to deal with them. I don't have the energy to play the narcissist game. I've gotten so much better beating them at their own game.
That's fantastic. That's a skill. I mean, you really have to, when you're dealing with a narcissist, you have to step out of the emotionality and try really hard to think logically about what's going on. The catch is they're coming from a very emotional place, and trying to understand emotional behavior from a logical perspective is like square peg, round hole. You're never going to understand it.
Yeah.
But if you can learn to understand why they're behaving the way they are, and that's hard because a lot of times you don't know, or you get so caught up in it, or you're being gaslit 6 ways to Sunday and you just can't even see straight anymore. Once you can see like, oh, there's something going on for this person, then you become a little more logical, and that gives you some distance, time-space distance away from it so that you can respond non-emotionally, kind of like you said with the ex, where you're like, one word answers. I'm not going down the rabbit hole with you. You are no longer the black hole that's going to suck me in. Like I'm on the outside, I'm on the precipice looking in, and I can maintain this position by being logical and not getting pulled into the emotion of it. And it's hard, but Mimi has the right idea. That's exactly what you have to do.
Yeah, Mimi also had a great comment when we were talking about the feelings thing. She said, holding on to your hurt to feel sorry for yourself. And she also said, yep, you have to stand back and say reacting worth the drama. And if you don't care what they say, I think it helps. Yeah, it does. I agree.
Yeah, you have to kind of put that boundary up for yourself. Yeah, you have to put that boundary up for yourself, and just decide that you don't want to engage in that. And it's so hard because we're emotional, vulnerable people at our core, and it's just so hard getting sucked in, especially with narcissism, because you have to understand narcissists are broken people as well, right? They have a bad reputation. Many of them deserve that reputation because of their behavior. But just like with BPD, borderline personality disorder, these people don't want to go through life this way. It's not their choice. It's not their preference. And a lot of people get really upset with me when I try to encourage empathy for narcissists, because they're like, but they're raging a-holes and they're terrible and they gaslight and they manipulate. Yes, they do. But think about where that's coming from. They didn't buy that off the shelf at the grocery store. Like, nobody wants to be that way and
Yeah.
have these relationship problems or have people telling them they're a jerk or an a-hole or whatever. They got that way because of their own brokenness, because of crap that happened to them growing up. Now, you still should set boundaries with narcissists. I'm not saying engage with them or allow them to mistreat you. Absolutely not. But I think, and I talk about this in the betrayal book too, when you can understand and have just a modicum of empathy for someone's position, however detrimental it might be, that's how you get through it. That's how you move past it, is just recognizing their humanity. And I always like to say, we've all been through stuff, so we could have turned out any number of ways. There, but for the grace of God, go I. Like, I could totally be that same way if I had certain experiences, and if I didn't get help when I was younger, and if I chose to protect myself with this narcissistic shield or whatever. So I think that insight that Mimi is talking about is so important. Like, it's not about you. This person and their narcissism and their antics, it is not about you. It feels like it's about you. It feels personal because you're the only other person in the room who they're talking to and gaslighting and manipulating. But it's not about you. Nothing is personal. Nothing. Anything that happens to us from another person is about them and their demons and their stuff. And so when you can realize that and kind of put that, wall up, then it's life-changing. It's kind of like what you said with your ex, the realization you had where you're like, wait, I don't have to do this way.
Yeah.
There's a different way.
Yeah,
And it's hard to get
came
to
a
that
realization. Yeah, it was hard. It was hard to get there though, but she had
Yeah.
such a grip on me too. But that final moment, when it just said, "I'm done with it all, man." I lost everything. Like, I've had to rebuild. Like, I was down to 3 boxes to my name. Literally, it's the only thing I had left after the whole aftermath of the whole thing. And then eventually it was she disappeared. The kids came to stay with me, and then the kids went back to live with her. And all that kind of stuff too. And it was rough because she just like would start picking the kids little by little, start filling them heads with nonsense and things like that too, telling them all these great things. Oh, I'll buy you all this stuff, and all these other things. And it was just like it's a battle, man. It's a rough battle, like especially when you have kids with a narcissist. It gets ugly because then they weaponize them and everything else, and it's the constant attacks and all that ugly stuff. So, but I am gonna write my own book. I'm eventually gonna do it. I'm just like you. I'm eventually I'll get there. Because everybody asks me about myself, but I don't really talk much about myself. And a lot of people are always so fascinated about the things I tell them. I said, yeah, everybody says the same thing. Oh, Pete, you should write a book. Yeah, like, yeah, I'll get around to it eventually. I got too many things to do.
Definitely, absolutely. It's like you said, if your story helps one person, then it's a win.
Really quick before we start wrapping up, Mimi had a comment again. She said, empathy, but you need to keep your boundaries with them. It's recognizing their issues. This can take the power away from the narcissist, but the narcissist needs to feel superior, so they rip others down to make themselves look better.
Right. Yeah. So understanding, that's absolutely it, Mimi. Understanding where they're coming from. Yeah. But then because you recognize where they're coming from, you can choose to stand on the outside of that and not engage. I have a patient who's dealing with, she's in the process of divorce from a narcissistic ex. And he fills the kids, like you were saying, he fills the kids' minds with ridiculous things. And so then one of her children will come back and say, Dad said these things. And she would just kind of gloss over it or ignore it. And I said, okay, you can't do that. I understand it frustrates the hell out of you, but you've got to respond. You've got to, don't badmouth Dad. He's badmouthing you, but don't badmouth Dad, because kids own that. They know they're 50% of each of your genetic material. So they own whatever bad things you say about the other parent. So stop doing that. But refute what he's saying. Tell your kid, like, honey, I'm really sorry that Dad told you that, but that's not true. Here is the truth of the matter. And I just want you to know that, right? We don't need to badmouth anybody. We can just set that boundary and say, that's not true. And then you can reach out to the soon-to-be ex and say, hey, so-and-so said that you said this. I just want to ask you not to say that anymore. And they probably will, but you're setting your boundary every time. And what you're doing is you're holding them accountable every time. Whether they choose to take the accountability or not, it depends on where they are on the spectrum of narcissism, honestly.
Yeah.
But
Definitely.
you still get to set your boundaries. And that feels empowering, just to even send the text to say, hey, stop doing this.
Yeah.
Whether they do it or not is actually a separate issue, which I know is frustrating as hell. But you setting that boundary is hugely important for your own well-being.
Yeah, very true, very true. Well, we're at the part of the show, guys. Unfortunately, we have to start winding down. I've loved having Dr. Jen so much, but Dr. Jen, I'm going to ask you a couple questions. I think we've already previewed these ahead of time. One of them is a credit to a friend of mine. She has a show called The Shit That Goes On in Her Head. When she was on the show, she asked me a question. I'm going to ask you. It's if your mental health had a song, what would your mental health song be? Everybody gives me this same look every time I ask this question, by the way. They all look at me like, damn, that's a great question.
Eye of the Tiger.
Eye of the Tiger, I love it. Awesome.
Yeah,
That's
or
so
Katy
great.
Perry Roar. One of those, yeah, something about a tiger, or the roar, or
Roar, yeah.
The overcoming is really what it's about, is
Yeah.
the overcoming, because we all have our stuff. It's like, are you going to stay stuck in it? Are you going to continue to make yourself a victim of it? Or are you going to be the survivor that you know you are? Because victims die, survivors live. If you survived whatever it is you went through, then you're a survivor. If you live to tell about it, you're a survivor.
Yeah. Maybe I'm just putting this up really fast. She said, asking if they said something is not a good idea. You're opening yourself up to more of an attack. Maybe these are all great comments you're making, by the way. And I really appreciate you coming in and giving us all these ones, because they're really good, though.
Yeah, I think, Mimi, yes, to your point, I'm not asking them if they said it. I'm telling them, hey, our child said that you said this. And so I'm going to ask you not to say stuff like that anymore, because you and I both know it's not true.
Yeah.
So, and if you want, if it's not safe to do that, to your point, Mimi, then you can skip that part. You can absolutely skip that part, but definitely refute the sentiment with your child without bad mouthing the other parent. So there are two parts. You can pick and choose, what parts feel safe, because it does depend on where they are on the spectrum of narcissism.
Yeah.
So I get your point.
So the second question, and the one I've asked everybody to this point, is that if you could break the stigma about mental health, like anything you hear that just drives you absolutely nuts, what would it be?
Pete, this is going to be another episode, because I'm going to start talking about borderline personality disorder. It drives me insane, the stigma that BPD has around it. I actually just yesterday submitted a request to be on the Mel Robbins podcast to talk about BPD. And, it's kind of like you said, you never know, but you got to shoot your shot. Because there's so much stigma associated with that disorder. Again, they get a bad rap. And again, some of them, their behaviors, we say, gosh, they deserve it. They deserve to have a bad rap. They deserve that negativity. But what I say is, again, look, we're all human here. We've all been through stuff. Some of these people with BPD, the stories I've heard, it's unimaginable. You would not even, your stomach will turn when you hear these stories sometimes. And that's putting it mildly. But you have to understand, anytime someone is acting the way that they're acting, I'll say it again, they didn't buy it off the shelf at the grocery store. Yeah. No one goes looking for interpersonal problems because they like it and they want it. Now, some people look like they like drama because they keep drawing it into their lives, but I assure you, they don't. They hate it. At their core, they hate it. And so having some compassion and understanding where these people are coming from. BPD is an information processing disorder. It's a personality disorder by the book, but it's an information processing disorder. And anxiety is an information processing disorder too, for that matter. Information that comes in, you process it in a certain way. It generates thoughts that generate feelings that generate behavior. Yeah. People with BPD, when they act out, when they lash out, when they're ugly to other people, they're protecting themselves. It's really messed up looking to you, but they're protecting themselves. And until they learn another way, that's what it's going to look like. And that's the part of my job that makes it so rewarding, keeps me doing it over 2 decades, is watching people learn that other way. We should be growing and changing and evolving until we die. So watching people overcome is tremendous. So if I could go on tour talking about BPD and trying to reduce the stigma specifically associated with that, sign me up. I'm in.
I agree with you though on that point, because I don't think people even know what it is. They get it mixed up and what is it, bipolar mixed up, because they're always like, what is that? And then you start like explaining it to them, they look at you like, what? I'm like, oh yeah, it's like, you want to know some complexities, go look and see what some of these people deal with on a daily basis. I was like, you don't understand the level of things these poor people are dealing with at a time. You know, I was lucky enough to meet somebody that had it in person, and she was explaining her situation to me. And then we've had a guest on the show, the musician. She was actually the one that had brought it up too, that she had, and she was explaining it totally differently, the way it worked for her. And that's why I was so fascinated, because I'm like, it's so interesting when you run into people with these different personality disorders, because everybody has a different thing. I think FND is the most interesting thing I've run into so far on this show. And I've met only one person. It's functional neurological disorder.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
that manifests in a number of different ways.
Yeah, and that one was an interesting one to hear. The one woman said her hand kind of like, she got stressed out, so her hand would claw up like this. Another person I met said they had facial paralysis and things like that too. So it was always so fascinating every time somebody said something like that, because I'm like, oh, okay, listen, I'm interested. I want to know what it's like for you to have it, because I'm curious what yours is versus what I've seen people that have had it. And it's always fun to compare, to see where different things that come up when people have that kind of stuff, because you'll learn that a lot of those people, you know, it's different for everybody. I mean, you could read this in a book all day, but when these people are in front of you talking to you and you're hearing their experiences, it's a whole different story, because now they're telling you something totally different than what the book is telling you, you know, and all that kind of stuff, or the great videos that you make and things like that. You know, it's like, these are things that people deal with, but it's the great thing about the show is it highlights that too when you get them on here. And because I'm so interested about these things. When they ask me things, I'm like, okay, cool. Let's talk about that, you know, and things like, because I want to see like what it is they experience versus the people I've met already that have had it. Because if you start comparing notes, a lot of times it gets more interesting, because, you know, it's so fascinating to see the different things, how some line up and some don't line up. And it's always interesting every time you walk into those industries. Especially the one with DID was the most interesting to me too, though, because it's like you hear all these stories, but now this person's in front of you. And me, with my knowledge of what I had already, I knew what I was looking at. I'm looking at little ticks of things that are changing. And it's so interesting to me, because it's like, you know, you're watching it happen, and it's just like, and those little things you're noticing in your head, you're noticing them, but you're not making any mannerisms on the camera, because obviously you don't want to upset somebody, but you're noticing them things. Because I'm so fascinated when they start doing these things. It's like, hey, yeah, I'm starting to identify these, you know, and it's great with every conversation. I learn new things, and, you know, and people start bringing more things to the table and start adding more tools to your kit and stuff like that too. So with that being said, Dr. Jen, I want to thank you so much for being here. This has been a dream. This has been a dream. You've of course seen my Instagram post. You were one of my top 5 guests I've always wanted on this show.
Thank you.
And you were here, and I'm so excited you came. If anybody wants to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Yeah, so I'm all over the socials. My website is drbellingrat.com. That has links to a number of different other ways to find me. On YouTube, it's Shrink.think with Dr. Jen. On TikTok, it's Shrink.think with Dr. Jen. The podcast is called The Psych with a Mic. I think those are probably the main ways. On Facebook, it's just if you search my name, it'll come up, Jennifer Bellingrat, it'll come up. So, and then I think I'm on Amazon and Barnes and Noble with the books. There's a book, the marriage book, and then there's a book about perimenopause called You're Not Crazy. So that's out there, on Amazon. And then, I think beyond that, I would just say the psychoeducationacademy.com. That's my training platform. Tons of free resources, several paid resources, courses on sleep, courses on the belief reset, which is what we were talking about earlier with overcoming self-limiting beliefs. Yeah. There's a $14 course on overcoming negative automatic thoughts. $7 course on grief. There's all kinds of stuff on the psychoeducationacademy.com.
That's awesome. Well, thank you again so much for coming. I appreciate you being here. This has been a dream. It's been great having you guys. And as I always say, I'm Pete vs. Anxiety. I'm on X all the way down to TikTok. I'm on Spotify all the way down to iHeartRadio, guys. And as I always say, it costs nothing, absolutely nothing to be kind to somebody. One kind act you can do to save their life, or hell, you can even make their day. I'm Pete vs. Anxiety. You sign off saying, don't ask how your day is today. Say, hey,